At first light, Liuwa Plain seems almost endless across western Zambia. A vast landscape of golden grass stretches toward the horizon, broken only by shallow wetlands and seasonal floodwaters. For a moment, there appears to be nothing here. Then the mist begins to lift and the plains starts to move. Shapes emerge in the distance. First a handful, then hundreds, and finally thousands of wildebeest traveling together across the wet grassland. Their movement follows a rhythm that has existed for generations, driven by rain, water, and the search for fresh grass. This is one of Africa's great migrations, a spectacle that remains largely unknown compared with the famous migration of the Serengeti and the Mara. But Liuwa Plain is remarkable for another reason. There is no lion's roar rising from the grass. For decades, the great predator that dominates so many African ecosystems was almost completely absent from this landscape. Conflict and hunting had driven the lions away, leaving an ecological vacancy that could not remain empty forever. Another predator moved into the space they had left behind. The spotted hyena, a large clan, moves through the morning grass. Led by powerful females at the center of a strict social hierarchy. These hyenas are not waiting for scraps. They are hunting. A wildebeest has become separated from the herd, and immediately the clan begins to respond. One hyena approaches from the front while another moves around the flank. The wildebeest turns sharply, trying to keep every predator in sight. But on a landscape this open, there is nowhere to disappear. The chase begins. The hyenas keep the pressure constant while the wildebeest races across the grass. Dust rises beneath its hooves. The distance slowly closes. This is not the familiar Africa of lions waiting in ambush. It is an ecosystem shaped by their absence. A place where the normal hierarchy of the savanna has been turned upside down. For decades, Liuwa had no king, but nature never leaves an empty throne forever. Liuwa Plain is a wilderness shaped by seasonal water and endless grasslands, but it is also a wilderness shaped by absence. The absence of mountains, the absence of permanent rivers, and for much of its recent history, the absence of lions. When the rains arrive, the landscape transforms. Water spreads across the lowlands. Fresh grass appears. Insects emerge and herds begin to move. Every species is connected to this seasonal rhythm. But none has benefited more from the unusual conditions of Liuwa than the spotted hyena. Across much of Africa, the spotted hyena lives beneath the shadow of the lion. Where lions are abundant, hyenas must compete for food. Defend their kills and constantly watch for a more powerful rival. But Liuwa offered something very different. For generations, there were almost no lions. And without their traditional competitor, the hyenas were able to occupy a different ecological role. They became the dominant predators of the plain. Their clans could become large. Their hunting activity became more visible, and without lions constantly stealing their kills, they had less reason to remain hidden. The hyenas of Liuwa reveal something important about the natural world. Behavior is not always fixed. A species may possess certain instincts, but the way those instincts are expressed can depend heavily on the environment around it. Remove a competitor and an entire population can begin behaving differently. On the open grasslands, the hyenas developed a hunting strategy based heavily on persistence. A herd of wildebeest is difficult to attack, while thousands of animals remain together. But sooner or later, one individual falls behind. It may be young, injured, or simply separated from the herd. That is when the hyenas begin to move. They do not need to overpower their prey instantly. They need only to maintain pressure. One approaches, another follows, and the rest keep the animal running. Across an open landscape, endurance can become more important than surprise. For decades, this strategy allowed the hyenas to dominate a kingdom without lions. That kingdom was about to change. Because somewhere in the history of Liuwa, one extraordinary lioness had survived. Her name was Lady Liuwa. For almost a decade, she was believed to be the only surviving lion in Liuwa Plain. Imagine the isolation of such an existence. A lion without a pride, without a male, without cubs, and without another lion to share the landscape. Around her were wildebeest, zebra, hyenas, and endless grasslands. But the species to which she belonged had almost vanished. Lady Liuwa became a living reminder of what Liuwa had lost. She was not simply another predator. She represented the last surviving thread connecting the modern ecosystem to the lions that once lived here. Yet her survival also created a possibility. If one lion could survive in Liuwa, perhaps the species could one day return. African parks eventually began a carefully managed effort to restore lions to the landscape. But bringing back a predator is never as simple as releasing animals into the wild. Lions compete with hyenas, influence herbivore behavior, and change where prey feels safe. Their presence can reshape an entire food web. For the first time in generations, the hyenas would have to share their kingdom with a rival. The return of the lion would not simply add another species to Liuwa. It would begin rewriting the balance that had developed during decades of absence. Away from the drama of predators, another story is unfolding across Liuwa's seasonal wetlands. A tall bird moves slowly through the shallow water, its long legs carrying it through grass flooded by the rains. This is the wattled crane, one of Africa's most distinctive and vulnerable crane species. Its existence is closely tied to the seasonal rhythm of Liuwa. When the rains arrive, plain fills with water, plants flourish, insects emerge, and feeding opportunities increase. For the crane, these wetlands are not simply a place to find food. They are part of the environment required for breeding and survival. This makes the bird a quiet indicator of the health of the landscape. If the wetlands remain intact, cranes have a future. If the water cycle is disrupted, the consequences can reach far beyond one species. A wetland may appear empty from a distance, but beneath the surface, it supports an entire seasonal community. The wattled crane is one of the species that reminds us that Liuwa's survival depends on something that cannot be seen from a single photograph. The continuation of the natural cycle of water. Down among the grass lives another specialist. Oribi is small compared with the great antelopes of Africa. But its relationship with the grassland is remarkably precise. Oribi commonly live in pairs and maintain territories that provide familiar feeding and resting areas. They communicate through scent markings and other signals that turn an apparently empty patch of grass into a landscape filled with invisible boundaries. To an observer, there may be nothing unusual here. To an Oribi, every part of the territory carries information. This is where it feeds, where it rests, where it raises its young, and where it knows the safest routes through the vegetation. But specialization always carries a cost. The more closely a species depends on one habitat, the fewer alternatives it has when that habitat changes. For the Oribi, the grassland is not simply where it lives. It is the foundation of its entire existence. If the grassland changes, the animal has nowhere else to retreat. Then the plain begins to move. Across the horizon, wildebeest gather in enormous numbers, joined by zebra as they follow the seasonal rhythm of rain at grass and water. Their migration is one of Africa's great natural spectacles. Yet outside Zambia, it remains surprisingly unknown. The Serengeti Mara migration has become a global symbol of African wildlife. While Liuwa's migration continues with far less attention, but the animals do not move for cameras. They move because survival demands it. Rainfall changes. Fresh grass appears in different parts of the plain, and the herds follow the resources that keep them alive. Their movement also affects the ecosystem itself. Grazing changes vegetation. Hooves disturb the soil, and migrating herds transport nutrients across enormous distances. Predators depend on them, birds respond to them, and the entire landscape is influenced by their presence. The migration is therefore not simply a spectacular event. It is one of the processes that keeps Liuwa functioning. And while thousands of large herbivores move across the plain, another group of animals is quietly demonstrating a completely different form of adaptation. Across Africa, few birds are more closely associated with nest building than the weavers. Their ability to manipulate grass and plant fibers has produced some of the most elaborate bird nests on the continent. But the deeper we look into this group, the more surprising it becomes. Some are master architects. Some live in enormous colonies. Some build communal structures that resemble miniature cities. And one has taken a completely different evolutionary path, abandoning nest building altogether. These birds reveal just how many different solutions nature can create for the same basic problem: how to survive and raise the next generation. High above the ground, a male village weaver begins work. A single strand of grass hangs from a branch. He grips it with his beak, loops it around the structure, and pulls it tight. Then he starts again. Slowly, individual strands become walls. The walls become a chamber, and the chamber becomes a hanging nest. Every section has a purpose. Entrance must be positioned correctly. The structure must remain secure, and the interior must be suitable for raising young. But there is another reason for all this effort. A female is watching. Quality of the nest can influence whether she accepts the male. If the construction is poor, it may be rejected or even dismantled. The male simply begins again. For the village weaver, architecture is courtship. Every strand is part of an advertisement. And every completed nest is a chance to succeed. But not every weaver story is about individual craftsmanship. Some are about numbers on a scale almost impossible to comprehend. The red-billed kalea can gather in enormous flocks, sometimes transforming the sky into a moving cloud of birds. Their movements are closely linked to rainfall and food availability where conditions are favorable. They gather in huge numbers when resources decline. They move again. Their appetite can also be enormous, allowing large flocks to consume vast quantities of seeds and grain. For farmers, this can make the species a serious agricultural challenge. But ecologically, the kalea is part of the seasonal machinery of the African landscape. Rain produces vegetation, Vegetation produces seeds. Seeds support birds, and the birds move that energy across the continent. Then comes one of nature's great contradictions. Cuckoo finch belongs to the same broader world of African weavers and related birds. Yet it has abandoned the skill that made its relatives famous. It does not build a nest for its own young. Instead, female lays her egg in the nest of another bird, leaving the host to perform the work of incubation and parental care. No weaving, no construction, no hours spent collecting grass. The cuckoo finch has effectively outsourced the entire process. It is a striking example of evolutionary diversity. One species invests enormous effort into architecture, while another survives through a completely different reproductive strategy. Same broad lineage, completely different solution. Near the seasonal waters, the golden-backed weaver builds among the vegetation. Here, location becomes just as important as construction. The nest must provide protection, remain secure, and reduce the risk of predation. Every strand of grass becomes part of a structure designed around the dangers of the surrounding habitat. The bird is not simply building a nest. It is engineering a response to its environment. The landscape dictates the problem, and evolution has provided the tools to solve it. Then there is the red-billed buffalo weaver, a bird that takes communal living to another level. Several pairs can build within a large, tangled structure of branches, creating multiple nesting chambers within the same complex. From a distance, it may look chaotic, but up close, it is a network of individual homes connected within one enormous structure. There can be safety in numbers. A predator approaching a large colony has more obstacles to overcome and more eyes watching for danger. The weavers, therefore, demonstrate an extraordinary range of evolutionary strategies. Build alone, build together, build near water, build high above the ground, or build nothing at all. The same broad family contains architects, colonists, and parasites, proving that in nature there is rarely just one correct way to survive. From the smallest weaver to the largest predator, Liuwa is held together by relationships. Hyenas influence prey populations and remove carcasses from the landscape. Wildebeest and zebra transform vegetation as they migrate. Their grazing keeps the grassland dynamic, while their movement redistributes nutrients across the plain. Wetland birds depend on seasonal water, and small antelope depend on open grassland. Predators depend on all of them. This is what makes Liuwa more than a collection of species. It is a network. Change one part, and the others begin to respond. The disappearance of lions was one of the greatest ecological changes Liuwa experienced. Human conflict and hunting pressure had removed a major predator, leaving the ecosystem without one of its traditional controlling forces. But life did not simply stop. The hyenas expanded into the ecological space left behind. Their behavior changed, their importance increased, and the balance between predators and prey was reorganized. Liuwa became an extraordinary example of what happens when one of Africa's most influential predators disappears for generations. The ecosystem survived, but it became something different. Nature did not wait for the old order to return. It created a new one. But Liuwa does not exist behind an invisible wall. Beyond the protected landscape are communities whose lives depend on the same natural resources. People need land, food, and grazing areas. Livestock require space, and the wildlife moving through the region has to share that space with them. For migratory animals, this creates a particular challenge. A wildebeest does not understand a modern boundary. A zebra does not understand a fence. Their migration routes existed long before today's landscape was divided into different areas of human use. If those routes become blocked, an ancient journey can suddenly become impossible. This is why conservation cannot simply mean protecting wildlife inside a park. The land beyond the boundary matters too. And yet, against this history of loss, Liuwa has witnessed something remarkable. The lion has returned through carefully managed reintroduction efforts. African Parks has worked to restore a predator that disappeared from the landscape for generations. Process requires patience, protection, and constant monitoring, because the return of a predator can affect almost everything around it. Lions compete with hyenas. They influence prey behavior. They change where herbivores feel safe and where they choose to move. Their return, therefore, represents more than the recovery of one species. It is an attempt to restore ecological relationships that were broken decades ago. For the first time in generations, the hyenas must share their kingdom with a rival. The balance of Liuwa is changing once again. Liuwa's greatest story may ultimately be the story of recovery. African Parks began managing the landscape in 2003, and conservation efforts have increasingly focused not only on protecting wildlife, but also on maintaining a relationship between the park and the communities that surround it. Long-term monitoring helps reveal where animals move, where migration routes remain open, and where new pressures are developing. The return of lions is one part of this larger effort. Protecting wetlands is another. Maintaining migration corridors is another. And ensuring that local communities have a meaningful role in conservation may be the most important of all. A wilderness cannot be protected forever by fences alone. It survives when the people living around it have reasons to protect it. The sun is falling across Liuwa Plain. The grass turns gold beneath the final light of the day. Wildebeest move slowly across the horizon. Zebra disappear into the vegetation. Birds settle among the wetlands, and somewhere in the distance, hyenas begin another night's hunt. For decades, they ruled this landscape. They became the dominant predators of a kingdom without lions. But now another silhouette moves through the grass. A lion. The king has returned. Yet perhaps Liuwa's story was never really about a king. It is about what happens when nature loses one of its rulers and finds another way to continue. It is about hyenas changing their behavior, migration surviving without recognition, cranes depending on seasonal wetlands, small antelope tied to fragile grasslands, and birds that have evolved completely different solutions to the same problem. Most of all, it is about resilience. When humans removed a vital part of the ecosystem, nature did not simply stop. It adapted. It reorganized. It continued. And when people began repairing the damage, they discovered that recovery was still possible, but recovery is never guaranteed. The wetlands must remain, the grasslands must remain open. Migration routes must remain connected. Wildlife must have enough space to continue its ancient movements. Liuwa Plain is therefore more than a protected area. It is a living reminder that when humans remove one part of nature, nature will respond in its own way. Sometimes the result is a new balance. Sometimes the damage becomes permanent, and sometimes, if given enough time and enough protection, the wilderness gets a second chance. As darkness settles over western Zambia, the last light disappears from the wetlands. The plain becomes quiet, but beneath that silence, the ecosystem continues to move. Hyenas are hunting, herbivores are grazing, birds are settling into their nests, and somewhere beyond the darkness, a lion walks through a landscape where its kind once vanished. For the first time in generations, Liuwa has a king again, but the real power of this wilderness has never belonged to a single species. It belongs to the balance between them all.